Oleksandr Usyk has just confirmed the news to us that we've all been waiting for. He will fight on, and he currently has no plans to retire. But the opponent he's called out for his next fight is absolutely surprising. It will shock you. In this video, I'm going to be breaking down why Usyk chose to vacate that WBO belt instead of fighting Fabio Wardley, as he has now confirmed the reason for this. As well as analysing what I think he's trying to do for the rest of his career, what his goals are, and why he has called out this shocking surprise opponent. Hello everyone, and welcome back to A Guy Called Henry. For those of you that don't know, on this channel we try to be as objective as we can to gather all the facts and all the information and try and analyse and assess before I give you my own opinion on things. So don't forget to subscribe if you're new, smash a like on the video if indeed you do like it, and make sure you get your comment in the comment section below. What do you make of all this stuff that's going on with Oleksandr Usyk right now? Now, whenever it comes to Oleksandr Usyk and news around his next moves, we always wait with bated breath. Because he has 3 of the 4 belts in the heavyweight division, well, 4 of the 4 belts up until recently, he controls the division, he has all the power. And generally speaking, whoever he chooses to fight next will, of course, be the most significant fight in the division, because pretty much all the marbles will be on the line. But when you're as good as this guy is, when you've achieved as much as he has, you have to look at whatever he does next very carefully, because that will always reveal to us what his motivations are for continuing to box. And the reason that's in question is because people have rightly said, look, you've beaten Anthony Joshua twice, you've beaten Tyson Fury twice, you've beaten Daniel Dubois twice, who have been, some of the absolute top heavyweights in the world over the last few years. What left is there for you to do? I actually made a video about this recently where I proposed that it might be time for Usyk to retire. That might be the most obvious thing to do. But no, Usyk has come out in recent interviews and said that he very much plans to continue because boxing is his passion, boxing is his life.
I continue fight, I think next year.
And it might just be that he's one of those guys that pushes it a little bit too far. He might be someone that sticks around a bit too long and eventually loses because he just deteriorates that much. But honestly, that last performance he had against Daniel Dubois was one of the best of his career, in my opinion. He's not the same fighter he was. He's definitely a little bit slower. Maybe his output's not quite as high. But he's so talented, he's learning to work with that. And he actually stopped Dubois really very quickly. It was his first knockout at heavyweight in quite a few fights. So in that sense, it kind of looks like he might actually be getting better and really, adapting and adjusting to the size now. As well as confirming he'll continue, he also addressed the recent decision to vacate that WBO world title.
Listen, for me, very important in belt, because I win this belt, yeah? Say, hey, listen, protect WC belt. I say, yeah, I can do it, but not now. I have very hard 1.5 years with Tyson Fury, 2 fights, prepare for fight and Daniel Dubois. I do it. But not now.
I speculated on why he was doing it at the time, but he basically said it comes down to business. Wardley wants to fight him now because that's the mandatory that's been ordered, but he's not ready for that fight yet. It seemed like when he was talking about it, he was referring to the fact that he needed a rest because he's had so many big fights recently over the last couple of years. But he did also say that he would have fought Joseph Parker. He said that fight was interesting to him, whereas Wardley might be one for the future.
If win Parker, for me it's interesting. Win Wardley, for me not interesting. Give you belt, boxing. Maybe later we fight together, like a big fight.
And this comment from one of my subscribers on that video in particular that I just mentioned really stood out to me. He called it undisputed farming, saying it's effing crazy, literally letting belts go so that you could go out and unify again. And he actually said that, it's not his belt, but only for now, that he really fully plans to go and get it back again. I really do believe that the reason he's not made the Fabio Wardley fight is simply because he just doesn't view it as big enough. If Wardley had a larger profile, if he'd been competing at the top level for maybe 2 or 3 fights longer, then perhaps Usyk would entertain that fight. But I think his team have probably looked at the numbers and said, you know what, Alex, it's not big enough for us. And if he was to lose for some reason, then his legacy would be in jeopardy because it's not a commercially massive fight. So I think in every one of Usyk's moves now, you're going to see a careful balance of it being competitive, of it being a challenge, but also being something that adds to his legacy. And that is why I think he's called out this surprising name. When asked who his next opponent would be, who he wanted to fight next, when he said the words, Deontay Wilder...
I won't fight with Deontay Wilder.
I was a little bit surprised. I think you can forgive me for being a bit surprised because Deontay Wilder is someone who is not at the top of the heavyweight division anymore. He was obviously a long-reigning WBC champion. It was, in terms of the level of competition, one of the worst heavyweight reigns I've ever seen. But that aside, Wilder obviously was and always will be commercially a decent name. because of the way he went about his business with that huge punching power, he has a fantastic highlight reel. Whether or not his fights in and of themselves were particularly entertaining, you always knew there'd be a highlight reel finish at some point. And I can understand from like a legacy perspective why Usyk would want to have Wilder's name on his record. But from a current relevancy perspective, in terms of who is at the top of the division right now and deserves an opportunity to fight for those unified belts, Wilder is all the way down the list. In fact, I don't even think you'd find many people ranking him as a top 10 heavyweight in the world right now. After 3 grueling fights against Tyson Fury, the first of which was a draw that he should have lost on the scorecards, in my opinion. The second he got stopped, and the third he also got stopped. He's then attempted to make a comeback, and every time he stepped up to the top level again, he has been defeated comfortably. Joseph Parker with a wide points decision victory over him, and then he got absolutely splattered by Zhilei Zhang in what was a brutal knockout loss. And most recently, he had a comeback fight against Tyrell Herndon, but Tyrell Herndon is not a good boxer. He's not a top-level heavyweight. Whilst I can say confidently that he won the fight, he looked terrible. Deontay Wilder does not look like himself anymore, and I truly believe since he lost his athletic edge, since he got that little bit older, the things that made him so special, that explosive movement, that quick line speed, the ferocity he was able to deliver that right hand at, it's not there anymore. And when he hasn't got that, he was always a very limited boxer. He had a world-class trick that he was able to do in delivering that power, but he simply cannot deliver it anymore. So we have to ask the question, with all this in mind, what is Usyk doing here? Does he actually still want to compete at the top level? Or is he just looking for paydays? Because that's the only reason I can think that he would call out a guy like Deontay Wilder. Look, to be fair, when people look back on Usyk's career in 50 years, 100 years, all they'll really remember is that Wilder's name was on his record. The average person will go, well, he beat Deontay Wilder, another long-standing champion in that era. So I understand it from that perspective. But from the perspective of currency, of relevancy, beating a Deontay Wilder right now, it really doesn't mean very much. Usyk, I have absolute confidence saying, without doing any particular detailed analysis, would absolutely dominate Deontay Wilder and get him out of there quite comfortably, I believe. And this does lead me to believe that Usyk's sort of thinking quite strategically now. He's thinking, well, having that name on my CV in the future, yes, it will bolster my CV. But also commercially, it's probably a bigger fighter than a win against Fabio Wardley would be. Which tells me what he wants is to cement his legacy, he wants paydays, but he wants commercially big fights. Fights where the public actually care, where it actually means something. And I'm not really talking about the boxing hardcores, because I think most of us would much rather see him fight Fabio Wardley. But the fact that Usyk hasn't fully ruled out fighting Wardley tells me that maybe he's just looking for something to fill the gap. Maybe he's sort of thinking, let's let some of these guys go and get some wins so that there's some bigger fights for me out there to go and reunify this division again to regain that undisputed heavyweight title. Because honestly, right now, there's not a lot for him to do. So it's almost like he's having to manufacture something so that he can go out and have a significant and meaningful fight again. He really has completed that division. And whilst there's guys I look at and go, I'd love to see him in there with him. Like Ajit Kabayel, for example. It's a fight I've wanted to see for quite a while. Kabayel's promoters have done such a poor job with him that no one really knows who he is still. So Usyk would go in there risking everything against Kabayel in a fight that only the real hardcore fans would even understand the context of. So I think what Usyk's doing here is he's being patient. He's saying, let me get a fight in the meantime that adds a few more things to my life, to my bank account, to my legacy. And in the meantime, let's let this division move on a little bit so that I can then go and take on the next big challenge that is suitably big commercially to go with it. The other thing we should really talk about here is this whole Anthony Joshua thing, because Anthony Joshua is now part of Team Usyk. I mean, he's not training with Usyk's head coaches, but he is training with one of Usyk's coaches, Igor Golub, who also trained Berenchik. He's a wider part of Team Usyk, but he is one of the coaches that is involved in that camp. And Usyk said he actually invited Anthony to come and train with them because they're now friends, they chat, they're not just, casually talking. He said they actually do talk with each other, and he said, I love Anthony Joshua. He's got a big heart, he's got a lot of talent, he's a smart guy. He won't box like me after doing this, but we will get the best out of him. It's not just my style that's in this camp. I thought this was very, very interesting. I really did, because when you look at what commercially is an option for Oleksandr Usyk, he would want Anthony Joshua to go away and win fights, because then that creates another option for him if he does want to continue his career, which it really seems like he does. It doesn't seem like Usyk's close to being done yet, because I think if he's saying, let's allow Wardley a couple of fights, a few fights to kind of grow his profile, that kind of implies he might be around for another year or two, maybe even 3. But with AJ now being part of Team Usyk, it sort of seemingly rules out the possibility of AJ fighting Usyk again at any point. Not that that's on anyone's radar particularly, and it really seems for AJ the focus now is on go in there, splatter Jake Paul all over the canvas, get your money, but then roll on into that Fury fight, which is what they've been talking about for so long now. But I do think there could be a clever strategic play going on here from Usyk. If he has Anthony Joshua as part of his camp, if Anthony Joshua goes in there and loses to Tyson Fury, I feel there's some sort of narrative there that might justify an Usyk-Fury 3 fight. Usyk has actually never ruled out the idea of this third fight, and Sergey Lapin, after the Dubois fight, was saying that they would like to see Usyk in there in the ring again with Fury. I know that Fury wants it because he obviously has claimed he won those first 2 fights, and he obviously would like to skip the queue and get straight back in there with Usyk again. But if Joshua can be part of Team Usyk and then lose to Fury, I think that creates that added narrative that could enable that third fight. Or indeed, if they manage to coach Joshua to that win over Fury, then suddenly Anthony Joshua is a very relevant heavyweight fighter again, and potentially that creates a situation where he could fight Joshua for a third time. He obviously wouldn't be able to be part of Team Usyk, but he almost manufactures his own opponent in that sense. Basically, the long and short of what I'm trying to say here is that Usyk is the puppet master right now. He's pulling all the strings in this heavyweight division. And what I think we're seeing now is not just genius in the ring, but genius outside the ring in terms of how he's attempting to move and manipulate the heavyweight scene to create genuine matchups for himself that actually mean something. Maybe that's a slight exaggeration, but that's genuinely what I'm reading here. I just keep thinking back to that comment one of my subscribers left. Undisputed farming. It's not the first time he's done it. We saw him give up that IBF belt. Daniel Dubois goes and wins it, gets a couple of wins against top-level heavyweights, and then they do it again, and Usyk destroys him even better than he did the first time. Even more easily, further enhancing his career. He gets another massive payday, and his legacy is even further cemented. I mean, it's just crazy what this guy is doing in the heavyweight division. I do think, and I said this in a previous video, some of you will remember, that there is one other option for him right now that I think is highly promotable, and it's really just if his handlers want to take the chance. And that would be putting him in there with Moses Itauma. I've spoken about it before. I don't think Moses Itauma has earned this fight yet based on what he's done so far, but that fight against Jermaine Franklin will go some way towards proving that he actually could be a top 10 heavyweight. If he deals with Franklin quickly, if he gets him out of there easily, then it's going to even further enhance his reputation. I think he probably needs one or two more wins against actual... I'm not going to say he needs to be a top 10 guy, because how many top 10 fighters are actually beating other top 10 fighters to get their world title shots? But he does need to have a couple more high-level wins before you could sort of really say that he deserves a shot of some description. But in terms of pure promotional talk, I do believe that you could really hype the hell out of that Itauma-Usyk fight, and I believe there's a huge payday on the table for Usyk right now if he was to take Itauma. But, like I say, why would Itauma's handlers rush him when he is the next generation, unless they think he actually could beat Usyk, in which case, maybe you just go for it. Having said all of that, if Usyk's sticking around a bit longer, then you might as well wait and then maybe try and get him for his last fight or something. I don't know. Anyway, guys, make sure you get in the comment section below. Let me know what you think about Oleksandr Usyk and his next moves. Do you think he's controlling the division in the way that I've described? Or do you think he's just sort of looking around for some kind of payday and he's not really as in control as I'm making out? I hope you enjoyed this video, guys. Thank you so much for watching it all the way to the end. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're a new viewer of this channel. And as I always say, on to the next one.